you'll never heal in the same place that made you unwell.
Hi, welcome to the Burnt Chef Journal. This is our first in a series of a brand new podcast hosted by myself, Chris Hall, the founder of the Burnt Chef Project. Today's guest is Tony Lewis, who previously has worked for the likes of Carluccio as a development executive chef, and also Jamie Oliver. And he talks about his past within hospitality, gives some great advice for those looking to get into hospitality straight out of college, and also talks about the time where he too experienced mental health issues and how he's dealt with those and overcome those. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and thank you for joining us. Today my guest is Tony Lewis. Hi, Tony.
Morning, mate. You all right?
Very well, thank you. You?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm absolutely ecstatic to be here. Like I'm absolutely over the moon that you said, listen, geezer, you fancy a quick chat. I was like, amazed. So thank you. Yes, good.
No, you're welcome. I mean, Tony and I have known each other for not that long, actually. It's the Burnt Chef Project that we sort of started talking specifically when we launched our wellbeing check-ins on Friday. But you've had some amazing points, a great insight. You've been an absolute trooper when it comes to rallying the cause. So I couldn't have thought of anyone better. So welcome to the first podcast. We'll see how we go with this, and hopefully we'll end up keeping it. I know you and I chat the hind legs off the donkey, so we'll probably be going for 4 hours. So if you're listening, settle yourself in. It could be a long one. So Tony, I know a little bit about your background in terms of working for the likes of Jamie Oliver, but just explain to the listeners sort of who you are, where you're based, and what your relationship with hospitality is.
Yeah, so thanks. So I started in catering at the age of 15, back when you really couldn't start at the age of 15, which was quite interesting. And that was working for Whitbread, actually. So I did nearly a 10-year stint with Whitbread, and worked my way up from pot wash and kind of what was then a prep chef, I suppose, all the way to head chef, and then was asked to look into doing some development stuff with them, and that was quite exciting. And then really found I was asking myself loads of different questions at the time of is this what chefing's all about? And it was a lot of it was pre-packaged or volume packed or volume prepared or pre-bagged sauces and that kind of stuff, and really didn't find it as much of a challenge, I suppose, as what I did when I started. When I started, I was completely wet behind the ears, and it was obviously the first kitchen I'd ever been in, except my nan's baking a cake. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And the head chef was the same head chef for the same 8 years until I became head chef, and he moved on to a different restaurant, and then sort of thought, well, actually, what else is there you can do in a kitchen apart from boil stuff in a bag? Like, surely this isn't all you fucking do, right? So then had a look around, and at the time, I suppose I was 23, 24, 25. I was looking around at different sort of chefs that were influential back then, 20 years ago, and there wasn't many. There was Gary Rose that was campaigning with everything with sugar in it, which was amazing. And then there was Gordon Ramsay that was just swearing at everyone, and that's all he did, I suppose, at the time. And at that time, that was equally the only thing my head chef ever did at me was either shout at me or throw a pan. So they were, I suppose, at the time, the only real influences that were around. And then questioned it and thought, is this it? Moved over to Carluccio's, in which I joined Carluccio's as a sous chef at the time. And then that was in London, was still in London at the time, and was opening a new restaurant for them, and really enjoyed the buzz of that. There was, it was scratch cooking every day. You were baking bread and sauces and soups and you name it, we baked or produced it on site. Desserts, we baked it, made it, panna cottas, chocolate fondants, whatever it was, we were making them, and absolutely loved it. Loved the high pace, loved the volume, loved the food, loved the decor, the people. It was just a family. And I did another nearly 10 years with those guys, and it was all the same people that were kind of progressed through the ranks. And at the time, there was probably only 15 or 20 Carluccio's at the time, and it was great. It meant you were on first name terms with everyone, and everyone in the business knew you, and you knew everyone in the business, and it was brilliant. I did a hell of a lot of openings. I think I did 20, 25 openings. I think I've never really sat and written them all down, but it was probably between 20 and 25. And then it was equally, I then moved into Manchester, and they offered me a role to open some in Manchester, and without even consulting my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and didn't even consult with her, just said, fucking yes, let's move tomorrow. Came home and said, listen, do you fancy moving to Manchester? And she said, no, what for? And told her, and we were working for the same business at the time. We were in different restaurants, and she was like, well, never really been to Manchester, and what the hell's up there, and that sort of stuff. And she, we took a trip, and she came up and she loved it, and she thought, you know what, this is great. We were in a sort of a 2-bedroom flat at the time in London, and didn't really think we would ever get to a point in London where most people don't, of being able to afford a 3 or 4 or 5-bedroom house unless you've pushed your grandparents down the stairs. So we thought, you know what, fuck it, let's do it. We don't have kids, we're not tied, we're young enough that if it doesn't work, we can go back. We were in a business that if it didn't work, we could go back to London with them, and took the leap and just thought, you know what, let's go. And loved every minute of it. Again, opened a good few restaurants, and then sort of evolved into an op chef, as you do through brands. You sort of evolve from head chef into ops, and then became a sort of a regional chef that was doing book signings and demos and stuff with Antonio, which was great, which was a lot of fun. He's either telling you a really pervy joke, or he's making you eat something amazing, and it's as simple as that, really. And again, did that all over the country, from Glasgow to Exeter, and again, a load of camaraderie with some great chefs and some great cooks, and developing a load of amazing people that to this day have followed me around the country and said, listen, when you're moving to wherever, or when we're doing this, can I give you a shout? Or I've got a menu for my place, we have a look at it, or whatever it is, and still kept in contact with a load of amazing people, which has been still to this day. It's fantastic to have people that you probably haven't seen for 10 years or don't really have huge amounts day to day, but they'll immediately ping a message to you or a picture of a menu and say, what do you think of this? Or I'm applying for a job, or I'm looking for that, or what do you think? And you end up becoming quite a friendly consultant to sort of, people in the industry, which is amazing to still be able to do, and not necessarily see them on the day to day like you would any other sort of friends and family. And I think that's something that you'll only really get in this industry of that bond, that sort of connectivity with people, be it a head chef or a manager, or someone that you've trained, or someone that you've moved on from.
A family bond, so to speak. Like, it's something that it's like, it's similar analogies in the military, and playing rugby, and sort of those close-knit groups where you rely upon each other on a regular basis to be able to thrive and survive quite harsh environments. And you do build something that perhaps transcends just a normal working relationship if you were sat in an office, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I've had some brilliant people that I've worked with, some amazing people that, like I said, I was on a pub quiz with a lot of the people that I did all those openings with, or have done recruitment with through Carluccio's, that we're all on sort of different avenues and different pathways now, and we were all together on a pub quiz on Friday night, and it was great. There was a bit of Tom Kerridge on there dropping in to do a few questions, and it was all industry leaders that have either done, like I said, recruitment, or been regional directors, or ops managers, or general managers, or recruitment, or whatever it was. It was just great to have, I don't know, 30 or 40 people on one Zoom that you've gone, fucking hell, I haven't seen you for 10 years. And, just, sending each other kind of those, like, jokey sort of, abusive messages. What the hell are you doing on here, you dickhead? Or, how many have you got right? And definitely how many have you got wrong? And that was great. So yeah, it is, there's no other industry like it. And that's the thing that I think keeps driving me forward is the sort of the bonds, the unique bonds that I don't think you'd get in many other industries. Like you said, it's in those physical contacts. Definitely it's in football or rugby and that sort of stuff. I don't think, or I don't feel that it's actually in anything else in terms of work, office spaces and stuff like that. I just don't see it being in that, but it is very, very unique to this industry. And yeah, it's that bond family, definitely.
You sound like you speak quite fondly of Carluccio's. What was it that you think within that environment made it such an epic environment to work in? What do you think that they did well?
I think at the time there was, when you go back 20 years, you start looking at High Street that was there 20 years ago. All the shops were full. There wasn't empty shops like they are now. 1 in 3 are shut, and 1 in 2 are nail bars and Turkish barbers, right? So back then they were all full high streets, of buzzing. It was a different era. It was something that wasn't on the high street at the time. When you think about, again, the high street of 25 years ago, the high street was a Chinese restaurant. That was it. There was one good Indian restaurant. There was one good Chinese restaurant. And then there wasn't, the huge sort of cafe era or the Italian brands that there are or have been recently. And so it enabled them to become very successful very quickly, in that there was nobody else doing quite simple but great tasting dishes that were pretty reasonably priced compared to some of the other competitors that sort of boomed afterwards. But it was very unique, and it was very different, and it was equally, like I said, it was the same people that kind of progressed with that business. So it wasn't a huge business where you never saw the same person twice. This was always, the first 5 people that were general managers became the operations directors, that then became the international directors, that then became the opening directors, and took the business, into the stratosphere, I suppose. And that was what was great. You knew all of these people quite intimately. You knew what their strengths or weaknesses or their expectations were, and you were able to grow with that. And that made it quite a unique business to work with. And not one that I've really worked with since, to be honest. And that made it quite special. And I was there, again, 9 years or so. And like I said, from doing cookery demos with or without Antonio, doing book signings with him up and down the country, and it was a lot of fun. And it did make it very, very individual and very, very unique. And then I suppose it was really halfway through that sort of journey, and there were a few others that were starting to catch on to that, and there were a few others that went, actually, the model's pretty simple. It was then quite easy to replicate in terms of, it didn't have incredibly unique equipment or an incredibly unique style that it couldn't be replicated. And there were a few other people that caught onto that, and there were a few other brands and in the industry that did went, actually we could do that. So there was the likes of James Italian or IRC that then came along and did sort of restaurant, bar and grill, and all the others. And then there were steakhouses that did the same, and then there was a few others that then just thought, actually, this is quite a straightforward model of let's open for a year. They become pretty self-sustainable at that sort of rate, and it will fund the next ones, and you can just continue to grow. And there were a few that copied that, and it was just a great business to be in at the right time, I think. And moving to Manchester, I've never looked back. Like I've loved being in Manchester, and definitely wouldn't have the sort of lifestyle that I've got here. I'd still probably be in the same 2-bedroom flat now, I think. With the council dickheads above us banging on the door when Liverpool have won, and then banging on the walls when Liverpool have lost. They just kind of did the same. But it was just an amazing time. And then
I was just going to say, for those that are sort of listening now, I mean, it sounds like, to be fair, you've had a pretty long stint of decent employment through Carluccio's, and Whitbread obviously sound like a slightly different scenario. Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of your interaction with head chef and your introduction into the hospitality industry, perhaps where things weren't done as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's quite easy to sort of sit and look at it back, but at the time you don't realize it, I suppose. But at the time, 25 years ago, there was only really Gordon Ramsay out there as a kind of an influential chef brand, or that was pinning the industry to the wall. So the only one that was coming out and saying, "Look at me, I'm a chef, and this is a great career to be in," was a guy that was screaming abuse at people and just making people cry. So there's a lot of people, particularly the head chef that I work with, that I worked under for a long time, was exactly that, and was only, was only a sort of almost a one-trick pony to it. So would only ever, he was either throwing an insult at you or was screaming at you. So even when you were doing stuff that was great, and even though this is a Whitbread restaurant where you're not even producing everything every day, that there's a demand to be the absolute perfectionist of that pastry or sauce or whatever it is. These are all pre-bought products, and most of the time you were really only using a knife to open a packet of prepped goods rather than actually fucking prepping it. So at the time, like I said, you're watching TV, you get home and you're watching this guy and he's screaming and shouting at people. You go, okay, well, that's how chefs are. He's the only one that's out there advertising himself or is, presenting himself, right? And then you go to work and the guy's screaming and shouting at you. So you go, okay, this is just how chefs are. The only two chefs I've ever seen in my life are just screaming at people. And you go, is that how we do it? Okay. And I didn't really take on that persona. Definitely you need to be sharp and you need to be firm and it's got to be right, and there's the spec, standard, safety implications, whatever it is, training, whatever it is, that's fine. But to stand and just scream at people relentlessly 15 hours a day, didn't really get it. And because they're the only people that you'd ever see, it just kind of washed over you and you just kind of accepted it at the time. When you look back now, you go, fucking hell, like this guy is screaming at me for cleaning the fridge. I'm trying to clean the fridge, I don't need to be sworn at for that. I don't need to be screamed at for that. I'm just cleaning the fridge, or whatever it is in the middle of service, being screamed at, because actually when you look at it and you go back in hindsight, it's probably just the fact that there was a lot of pressure in it. It's the middle of service and he's being demanded of and he's being asked for this table and you're probably not quick enough on delivering this, or, but actually when you look at it, yeah, it's quite a different regime to how it is now. And actually there's a lot of different people that do it in a different way now. And I certainly don't do it in that way now. And it sometimes gets looked at as if you're quite laid back, but it's just because you don't need to do it in that way. I can ask you how to do something, Chris. I don't need to throw a knife at you to do it. You know what I mean? Like, Chris, if we can catch up on the phone on Monday night, I don't need to throw a pan at you to get you to do that, and it's, but at the time you think it's just how it is, or this is the industry, the GM's the same. He's very aggressive and he's screaming at you in the middle of service because he's under pressure. And the head chefs then echoed the exact same mentality. And you just think, well, everybody around me is either a fucking lunatic or, this is how this industry is. And so you're already washed in it. You're already, becoming institutionalized to it or acclimatized to it, and that's just how it is. And it's not until, it definitely wasn't until I got to probably 10 years later in Carluccio's, where I then started to work as a head chef around 7 or 8 or 9 different characters, and they were all accomplished or talented chefs that I've worked with again and again since then. And they all had a different way or a different perspective and a different approach, and the industry had evolved, and actually you were then, it was a little bit stricter on sort of the food safety and stuff like that, so it was adding a little bit more pressure to it. But the industry had started to change, and he wasn't the only chef that was out delivering himself or portraying himself. And then there were the likes of, Hugh Fearnley-Whitton stores that come out were very laid back, or Jamie Oliver or Heston Blumenthal was starting to come out, and you never saw these guys losing their shit. You never saw these guys screaming and throwing stuff or screaming in someone's faces. Not really. What you saw was this different, laid back, chilled out character. Yes, it was a lot of work and very detailed, but actually they weren't in that same characteristics, I suppose. It changed the industry, but it took a while to change that. And it's still now 25 years later, there's still an entire generation of chefs that have been bred and trained by those mentalities, those that vocabulary, that mentality, and that culture. And they know different, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily delivering different. And you do have to stop and think, and why would I want, now 25 years in, and I could be potentially training my daughter or my son or people that I'm very passionate and care about. Why would I want to scream in their face to ask them to do something? Why would I want to lose my shit at them and throw them or put a slice of bread either side of their head and tell them they're an idiot fucking sandwich to get them to do something that I want? What's wrong with an arm around the shoulder, or not even an arm around the shoulder? Just here's the detail, here's the expectation, and this is the implication if it goes wrong. And we train them on how it costs us a lot of money to throw that product away, or it costs us in retraining to get it right. And actually, there's a certain level of expectation that we demand. And if they don't fit that, then this isn't the business for them. But that doesn't mean you stand there and scream at them and put a slice of bread at the sides of their head.
Yeah.
I think there's a different way of doing things. And it was interesting to listen to a great chat with the exec chef at Tottenham Hotspur a few weeks ago, that you were presenting and hosting, and that was great to hear. A very, very similar like-minded sort of situation, in that he'd come up through the ranks of being in these very hostile and aggressive situations as a kid, cutting his teeth in an industry and going, well, this is it, that's just how it is. And it isn't until you get to a level of responsibility and you go, actually, these people are under my care, and actually I might not be their dad, but at times you do have to give fatherly advice, or I am not their bank manager, but for fuck's sake, don't spend all your salary on getting pissed, you silly git. There's a lot of bits that you just kind of, you have to absorb, not just to be their head chef and say, there's the spec and that's what we're delivering, or there's the safety and that's what you've got to do with it. And, we do become far more than just a head chef, or far more than a job title to everyone that works in that kitchen with you.
And how, just out of curiosity, because a lot of these skill sets, so nowadays we see a skill shortage within hospitality. You'll see your sous chef leave, so your CDP gets bumped up. You'll see your pot wash go from a pot wash to, he'll be going up the ranks and following everyone in sous. As a result of that, we'll find more and more people now at the age of 19, 20, 21 years old getting their first head chef role or their first sous chef role, with a good ability to prove themselves when the shit gets tough at the pass, when it's going busy, in terms of prepping. They know how to navigate these areas. But for a lot of people out there, they don't necessarily know how to manage people and how to get the best out of people. I certainly didn't until I was in my sort of late 20s, really.
Yeah.
And you sort of make a few mistakes and you realize, fuck, actually, no, that's not how you speak to a 50-year-old to get them to do what you want to do. It's more about, giving them that freedom and that ability to fail, to be able to build up that rapport. But how would you say, you learn to manage those people, or what the implications of managing them wrongly would be?
I think to a degree, definitely the first 10 years, there was never a management training course ever. It was just, you're either screaming at someone or someone screaming at you is your management training, particularly for me in such a big branded industry. Leader at the time, I suppose, that Whitbread was, certainly not now, in my opinion, but there definitely wasn't the sort of management training courses. Whereas when I'd moved over to the likes of Carluccio's at the time, they were very small but very structured. And I think it's looking for the right restaurant that can give you structure is really something that you really need to look at. It's not just, it's all well and good going to, I don't know, the big high profile restaurant that you've fallen in love with, or you love the head chef, or you've seen this guy on TV and you think, wow, that'd be great to work for him. But what structure has he got? And you've really got to ask, when you're at interview stage or when you're in the kitchen doing your trial, you've really got to look and go, what development process have you got? What progression plan is there? It's all well and good, like you said, of just being bumped up, but what actually have you got in the way of a succession plan? Or what do you do with someone that wants to graft and someone wants to progress? Because it is also an industry that can, one, leave you in the same position for years and years and years, and you never progress, and you find a 50 or a 60-year-old that's still a CDP or a sous chef and has never really had the right coaching or the right coach above him. And that's the case for a lot. And it's also that, you find people that just pick and choose, I've had enough of working here, I'll just go and work there. It's 50p an hour more. And so you go to these other places that, they might want 50p an hour more to give you, but they don't always have the structure. They don't always have a succession plan, a progression plan, and it's not massive industry leaders that have got them. I've seen a lot of places where you get in as exec chef and you'll go, why haven't you got a succession plan? What is there for the sous chef that's coming up? Haven't got it. What is there for a head chef? What training have we given the head chef? It's all well and good that he's inherited that he's got, food safety skills, or he's great with a knife, or he's brilliant, on the sauce section on a Saturday night. Great. He can deal with pressure. Fantastic. But how is he training the guys coming up? And not many of them, not everyone's got one, not everyone's got a succession plan. And that's something that I'd really, as an 18, 20-year-old now, I'd definitely say, look, it's just pick your restaurant wisely, pick your kitchen wisely. Don't just go for a name or a brand or a chef or a character that you like. That's only sort of 50% of it. You can graft for anyone. You can do 60, 70, 80-hour weeks for anyone. That's fine. But you've got to pick someone that can really look after you. And that's not every restaurant that can pick that. That's not every restaurant that can go, we'll everyone will say they can do it. The problem is everyone will fucking say, do you know what? Come and work for me because I've got this great business idea and I can really look after you. But it's actually because you're a good sous chef and they want you to work 70 hours so that they can have, daytime shifts and just sort of draw you in. And there's a lot that will manipulate you, definitely. So the guys that are coming through, it really is to just, one, be cynical, question everything. But two, really look for something that can really nurture you, look for places that can give you a good succession plan. And there are places that can do it great. There are, bizarrely, there's garden centers that have got great succession plans because they've got people outside of kitchens to start helping them on a HR perspective or a people development plan and have got progression plans that can put in. It doesn't have to be a restaurant. You can pick some brilliant places that not just high street branded restaurants. There are some great independents. Just ask when you're starting out in your first, when you get into interviews, when you're getting to a trial, when you're doing your cook-off, all the way through your recruitment process, ask what is there as a succession plan, not just if that guy leaves, do I get his job? That's not progression. That's not management training. That's not coaching style. That's just default. And that's very different. That's very different.
Definitely. I mean, we're doing a lot of talks with colleges over the course of next year, including we've just signed up to do a lecture via Zoom with multiple colleges at the same time, trying to encourage these young professionals how to look after themselves within the industry. But also there's a big topic around that of, the tides are turning with regards to these new labor force that's coming into play. And it's a case of, and from what it sounds like speaking to yourself, it is a case of actually the ball is in your court as an employee now to decide where you want to work that fits you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work in sort of flipping burgers in order to get a well looked after and have an enjoyable career. You can work at some great places. Sat Baines, I know, who looks after his staff incredibly well. And there's people like Josh Eggleton at the Pony and Trap and Chew Magna, again, Michelin star, looks after his staff tremendously well. And it's places like that actually you can go to work. And yes, the waiting list might be slightly longer, but if anything, that's a sign to employers that these guys have got it right. You're looking after your team, looking after your assets as number one. So before you get into the mix and before you get into, the bubble that is in hospitality, and as you say, when you get into it, that's just the way it's done and that's the way it's always going to be. Set yourself off on the right path. Don't become one of those people who just goes, look, this is it. This is the way it's going to be, and nothing will ever change.
I mean, definitely for me, as a kid, the age of 10 or so upwards, I remember being in my nan's kitchen, which I think a lot of us in the industry kind of started out. You're dipping your finger in the batter before that cake's being baked, or you're playing around with doing different bakes, or you're doing some biscuits or whatever, and it sets off your inquisitiveness, doesn't it? You're like, what happens if we put this in, or what if we do this, or what happens when you get it wrong? Why has it gone like that? And all of a sudden it's that science that asks the questions, isn't it? Of like, what if we did that though? But what if I put, that on the top of it, or what if we added that instead of that, or, and it sparks something that you want to enjoy. And a lot of speaking to a lot of chefs, that's kind of where a lot of them start their relationship with food, or their career and relationship sort of becoming one. And from that, you if that's the industry you want to go into, you really do have to, decide to make the right choice. And it's not just, everyone will offer you that extra 50p. You've got to know when to pick and choose what it is that what you can be offered. And it's not always the extra money that can be offered. Actually, that guy that's not offering the extra 50p may well have a far better structured plan for you, may have a far better training regime, or a better quality of kitchen, that he's got far more dynamic sections that you can learn far more from, rather than just being a one-trick pony and just going to, I don't know, a steakhouse where, like you said, you just flip burgers and do grilled steaks. And, that's great. And that may offer you a bit more money, but fuck, you're going to be bored in 6 months' time, because that is the only thing you've now done for that extra 50p. Whereas 6 months investing in the other place, maybe not giving that extra 50p. Have you been around sauce? Have you been around pastry? Have you spent a month, doing each different section and actually progressed and learned far more skills than just earning that extra 50p? Because it's picking the right path is vital. You've really got to pick it, and you can put the graft in anywhere you go. That is never going to be the question. The question is, where is it you want to get to, and is this going to get me there? And it's not always the extra money is actually ever going to be the benefit. Actually, sometimes that, the money's irrelevant.
I think that I agree with you 100% on that, and it's definitely a mindset change in terms of how we look at our careers within hospitality. It leads me nicely on to self-care and well-being. And I think what's quite important about this podcast is that it's a podcast that's opening up conversations around something that previously was quite stigmatized or quite taboo. So the question for you, Tony, is, have you had any brushes with periods of poor mental health, or have you known anyone or yourself that suffered from poor mental health? What was the cause, and really, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I suppose when I look back now, I think a lot of the time you don't necessarily realize you're in that rut or you're in that situation until you've kind of come out the other side. And that isn't always overnight. That definitely isn't the flick of a switch. I definitely struggled. I suppose when I got to Jamie Oliver, and I was sort of looking after 13 restaurants, I suppose, looking after them as an exec chef. So you're managing the sort of finances, recruitment, food safety, food quality, specials, all the rest of the fucking stuff, traveling up and down the country, leaving the house Monday morning, 5 a.m. for your first train, and you're meeting your first restaurant or your first meeting or your first whatever it is, or your first call. And then not getting home until Friday night, Saturday morning. And it becomes, the only thing you're doing. You're no longer, father, a husband, boyfriend, whatever. You're only this chef. You're only this sort of mechanism. You're only this cog in the wheel. And my God, I absolutely loved I loved working for Jamie, and it was a great role. And I'll always look on it very fondly. It was industry breaking in that it stuck its head out and said, we're going to offer a bit more money, or whatever it was. And it was a brilliant business to work in at the time. And it was at the peak of restaurants in that sort of Italian, sort of mold breaking that happened, I suppose, back then, 10 years ago or so. And then at the time when I took the job, my wife had baby number 2 and was, getting back into kind of work and all that sort of stuff. And I got offered a job with Jamie and thought, fucking hell, this is amazing. This is the biggest chef in the UK. There's no one bigger or better that you're going to work for. You've just done the kind of the Italian thing for nearly 10 years or so. So you know the food pretty well, the people pretty well. The industry is brilliant. And I was, I suppose, sort of riding the quest of a rave for probably about a year, and just never looked back, and was just becoming this, this great, figurehead, I suppose, for your restaurants. And, each of them had their own separate exec chef or ops director or whatever. And so you become quite influential in that you're sort of steering the menus and you're managing specials and you're looking after a team of brilliant chefs. I've probably never worked with as good a chefs as I ever did there. And some of them have gone on to do some amazing stuff, this country, Australia, various other places. But I suppose into the job for about a year and was absolutely loving it. And I didn't realize how distant I'd become from my wife, and become very distant in that, you know, like I said, I'd leave the house Monday morning, I'd get home Friday night, Saturday morning, and fucking tired, you know, and you're pretty exhausted, and all you want to do is put your work phone down and just switch off. And you get home and there are 2 kids bouncing off you, and your wife's not seen you for a week, and you need to get up and do this, and we're doing that, and you've got to make up for not being here, and so you become quite pressurized from that, and there's never any sort of real downtime, and it's just your life, you know. The Jamie became your life. I don't think it was. I suppose, yeah, a year into it, I became quite withdrawn and quite dark, and just fixed on being a chef, and really focusing on only those things, and became quite cranky for a lot, for all the, you know, for the worst reasons, because you're just being selfish and just being driven to just focus on this job, or focus on this brilliant restaurant that you're opening, or aren't I doing fucking great? And it then becomes about you. And my wife then was expecting baby number 3, and we weren't, you know, in the best place. And I definitely was never at home, because I was just grafting, in that you're, you know, 6 days a week not there, and even on the 1 day a week you are there, you're not there, because you're planning and you're on your phone and you're just checking in with emails, and this restaurant's had that accident, or this, or there's a supplier that hasn't turned up, or and then so all of a sudden you're not there 7 days a week, even though you are, and you're not there, and it just became a bit of a bubble that just was going to have to burst. And at the time I was in a really dark place, and I remember just ringing my dad in floods of tears, just going, she's having a baby and I just don't want to be there, and this is really fucking hard. And my dad got in the car and said, you know, that just doesn't sound like you. And I'd become, over, you know, the obsession of being, you know, reliable to all the restaurant, and reliable to the food, or reliable to a chef, or reliable to an industry. I'd sacrificed me, and I'd sacrificed my family, and I'd sacrificed my wife, and I'd sacrificed our children, and that bubble burst, and it burst, you know, the day my daughter was born, and I just didn't know where to go, didn't know who to speak to, didn't know who to turn to, and it was really fucking hard. And rang him and just said, I need to ask you what to do, because I don't know what to do. And just that phone call made me think, I do know what to do, and I've just been doing it wrong. And I'd really just become focused and driven, and just on a, like the bullet train, and just was going steam forward, and just had looked at things in the wrong way. And at the time you think it's the only way, or you know, it creeps up on you, and it's not just an overnight thing where you go, this is insane, and why would you ever be like that? And it was really hard. And I, you know, she, you know, it was a great birth. My daughter was healthy, and all the rest of it was fantastic. And we came out of it, and just sat at home and contemplated, and was very quiet. And my wife just kept saying, you know, there's something wrong. And it was really difficult. And it was just a bizarre time. And you definitely, you don't ever feel like that normally. You know, I'm very bubbly, and all the boys will ever tell you that I've ever worked with, I'm always prattling around and dancing around in the kitchen, and having fun. And yes, I've raised my voice, but it's not because I'm screaming at someone. It's because we're having a joke, or we're laughing around, or there's a good bit of camaraderie. And at the time I just wasn't those things, and sat there, took a step back, and thought, I need to stop. And my dad gave me some great advice, and more than anything, just sat there and listened, and was there at the time where I just didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go, and felt like he was just in a corner, and there was nothing that you could do to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just I phoned the guys at Jamie's and just said, listen, this is my last shift, and after my maternity leave I can't come back, because I just need to do something else. I can't do this. I just can't do this. And you know, I said to him, I've got to put my family first, and I need some downtime, and I've just become very obsessed with being a chef, or being reliable, or being this or being that. And just, I took a PlayStation home. I went to Tesco's, I bought a fucking PlayStation 4, and just went home and was just a dad for 3 months, and just went home and just rebuilt me and some mindset, and let the fog clear, and then got into a little bit of exercise and just tried to turn things around. And it started off of going for a walk and giving yourself 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is, a bit of breathing space, and then built on that, and just started to look at things in maybe a different way, and look after me and the wife and the kids and the house, and just be more of a dad, and be more of the person that everyone needed, or actually what I needed. And that was just not to be so self-indulgent, and it was just imploding, and you just don't see it until you kind of come out of it, and you go, actually, fucking hell, that was not great, and I didn't realize it was as bad as that. And it's only when you look back and people go, no, you were different, and you were very quiet, and you're not quiet. And it's when you become the non-characteristics of yourself, and you should know yourself. And yeah, I definitely had become something I don't normally I'm not normally am, you know.
It's funny you should mention how easy it is to slip into those patterns. As you say, you don't realize you're there until you're there, and then once you're in the hole, and you're thinking negatively, and you're snapping, and you're solely focused on one thing, which is work, and everything else can go fuck itself. You suddenly realize, shit, I don't know how to get out of this as well. And a lot of people out there will feel what we're saying, in terms of the fact that you're so far down that line, you think, oh Christ, what can I do? But it's encouraging to hear that you found steps that got you there. I mean, I'm curious to know, you say you started sort of thinking better, and your fog cleared. What do you reckon came first? Was it the feeling better about yourself, or was it the thought processes that changed first? Or is it a chicken and egg scenario?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, what definitely started the ball rolling there was just stepping out of what was it's a passionate industry, and you're either in it 110% or it's not really for you. And in that particular instance, for me, it had just started to consume me, and I, you think you're spinning the plates really well, and at the time I thought I was, and then just thought, actually, I need to come out of this, because I just am not feeling great. And it wasn't until I took a step out of it and found that I had a little bit of breathing space to then see what was going wrong. I suppose it's like I don't know. Yeah, it was just a little bit of breathing space, the right amount of breathing space for me, that I could see, actually, yeah, this is now something I need to kind of take a step out of. And it was that, taking a step out of it, and being there for other people, and it not just being about me, and not just being, a sort of a pressure cooker on me. You start to see, actually, what is it that's not working here? Actually, I need to give to other people. Okay, I need to actually invest in other people, or I need to invest in myself. Right, I'm just going to go for a walk. I need to go for a run. And actually, for me, all of a sudden, I realized I wasn't just walking for 20 minutes or half an hour. I was running 20 minutes, half an hour. And actually, Christ, I felt so good after that. And so then I'd run 40 minutes, or then I'd want to look at running, 10 miles with a few other guys over the Tough Mudder events. And before you know it, you're booking up different things. And I don't like running, Chris. I fucking hate running, but
I'm with you.
I found the exercise that it was only a 3 or 4 mile run most of the time, because I just get bored. But that just it just releases so many different things, from the frustration, or the focuses, or the aggressions, or the negativity, and all of a sudden you just, even running in the rain, and it just clears it. It was, yeah, that was a really interesting point for me. And exercise is still there to a degree. I mean, I don't do a lot of it now, but I don't feel like I need to. But I'm quite happy to just, if you said to me that you fancy a run tomorrow, yeah, I'll run, no problem. But I don't feel like I have to run. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are points in your career, I think, where you go, actually, I really need something to vent on. I really need a focus out of work. I need something that's going to clear my mind. And for me, the running did that, or exercise did that. And definitely, yeah, I've particularly now, that was 6 years ago now, and definitely that's just been that mantra since, is actually, okay, a little bit wound up, clear my head, once a month, every couple of weeks, even once a week, doesn't matter, but just get out half an hour to myself, back refreshed, clear mind, focused now. It was a nice little reset and just does the trick now.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And a lot of people are put off by exercise, especially when we're, you were working 60, 78 hours a week, living off of fried chicken and chips. And, it's difficult when you think of exercise because you're thinking of, Gymshark, and you're thinking of muscle ripped people and, going for marathons and stuff. But exercise has become this culture of looking at us and how we look, but it's not actually promoted for how we feel. And that's the important thing about exercise. Exercise doesn't have to be a marathon. You don't have to be toned with like 3% body fat on you. It's all about how you feel afterwards. And I'm the same as you. I fucking hate running. My knees cane afterwards. I can't do it. I look like a frog. Honestly, it's awful. It's terrible. But if there's anything that's happened during rugby is that during rugby and of running, luckily in rugby I didn't have to run too far. But in running is that you actually get quite moments of clarity, and some of the best ideas and some of the best thoughts I've had, and you stick on a podcast and go. Certainly for the Burnt Chef project, have been whilst killing myself running. But it's a really good point. And then gradually over time, you start to, as you say, you start to feel better, and you notice your thought patterns are changing, and it's just these small little tweaks. But it's a really good point. It's a really good point. So Tony, we'll close this up in a minute. But one thing I wanted to ask you, and I want to ask sort of all of our guests moving forward, is if you were to write a letter to yourself back before Whitbread, when you were looking at employment opportunities and you wanted to get into the industry, what would you have said? What would you have written to yourself? What advice would you give?
I think, it's a brilliant question. I think there's a couple of bits to it. You've got to know when to say yes and when to say no. Is definitely part of it. You can't just say yes to everything every week for 25 years. If there's, I fucking know that firsthand, but you just can't. At some point you're going to have to go, I'm not doing that, or I can't do that until, or you'll need to find someone else, or I'll find someone else to do that, because you just can't. You can't commit like that forever. So just knowing when to say yes and when to say no is definitely part of it. And it's also, don't chase, for me, definitely don't chase money, chase opportunities. And they're not always the same thing. You can go somewhere anywhere for that extra 50p, a pound an hour more, great. But what's it giving you at the end of it? Is it giving you something back, or are you just giving you? Are you extinguishing you? Or actually, is there anything that's coming back? Is there anything you're learning or gaining or earning from that? A wage is one thing, but actually experience or skill set or people, life connections, those are actually far more important, than the extra money, or it's just, choose you over money sometimes. It isn't a bad thing, but yeah, choosing the right places to work or the right places to say yes at is just invaluable. Put yourself first. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself first, and those people will go, yeah, okay, that's fine. That's okay. If you can't do it, no worries, but who can do it? I can't do it, but I have actually got someone else who will do it. Or it can be picked up at a later date. Just know when to say yes and when to say no. Some really good points.
Yeah, I think it's often easier said than done, especially when you're you're young, 17, 18, coming into the game. I mean, Christ, I would I'm probably a lot better at saying yes and no now, running a business and other things. Still wouldn't disagree with my wife. That's, yeah, again, you learn that as you get older as well. You just sort of agree and nod your head for a quiet life. But yeah, I think it's about knowing yourself and getting to know yourself. And if you don't know yourself at the moment, don't panic. Like, at the end of the day, you will get to that stage. But it's not being afraid to be an individual within a business and to be unique and to speak your own mind, providing you do it in the right way. I think it's an important point, and it gives you a good degree of control that perhaps you wouldn't have necessarily realized how valuable that is, to be able to fill those shoes, really. So Thank you for that. Is there anything else in terms of resources or anything that you would perhaps like the listeners to hear to, that perhaps if they are either starting their journey or they're on their journey and think that perhaps would set them on the right path?
I think there's a few different things. Give yourself time, give yourself space, but make a plan. Make plans. If a business is great, don't look to leave it. Look at what it can give you and push to see what it can give you back. Journaling is brilliant, is a great resource for just mind dumping, for a better word of it. You'll probably know of a better way of phrasing it than I will, but just sometimes taking what's in your mind and actually putting it onto a piece of paper. If that's right, I'm going to open my own website, I'm going to run my own business, or I'm going to do a podcast, or I'm going to I don't know, I've got a great recipe that I want to do. Don't just leave it in your mind to whirl and whirl. Put it down, write it down, put it onto a piece of paper. And actually, a lot of people I've actually given recipe books or blank journals as gifts for people. And at the time, they probably think, what the fuck is he giving me a blank book for? But actually, it's probably because they've not realized what that blank book is worth sometimes. And actually something with no dates in it, because I think a diary is probably a bit too regimented for me, but something that a plain notebook that I can just write the day's thoughts or feelings or plan for the next day is, and just put it in that bit of paper, put it down, get it down, and actually put it away. And actually, it's not just sitting there whirling around on your evening off or your day off, and where do I put this or where do I box it? Actually, you've got somewhere else. It goes there, put it down, and I'll come back to it when I'm ready for it now, and it's there, and I haven't forgotten about it, or it's still just buzzing around, not knowing what to do or not to complete it. So yeah, just putting your thoughts and feelings into a place and just putting them into boxes and being able to manage your own time. Yeah.
Compartmentalize.
I knew you'd have a better phrase than I would. But yeah, that's 100%. For me, that's one that's definitely the last few years as I've really understood myself. And particularly since leaving Jamie's, I've definitely understood that far more and thought, where am I going in either my career or my personal life or understanding how to support people, doing the training courses with you guys at Burnt Chef and learning how to then identify those people that are struggling. You can go, listen, I'll put an arm around him. What's wrong? What talk to me about, I've had a shit day, I've had this, I've had that. It's the anniversary of someone that's passed away and I've really had a struggle. Okay, look, let's have a chat. Let's go outside. Let's go for a walk. Just knowing how to identify those sorts of things, and not just yourself, it's other people. And just, leave your ego at the door sometimes, and just enjoy other people, enjoy nurturing, have a bit of fun along the way. And just remember what you got into an industry for in the first place. If it was because you love food, then make sure that that's still the thing that's keeping you in it. And you'll never heal in the same place that made you unwell. So if you're feeling in a rut and really struggling, and it's mentally draining in the place that you're working, it's never going to help you recover by still being there. So look at what you can do to kind of move on, improve, and just keep going.
I think that is a class time to end this first episode. So well said, my friend. Thank you very much for joining me and being a part of this. And look forward to seeing where it takes us.
Yeah, thank you, brother. It's been amazing. Thank you very much for the invitation.
No problem at all. Thanks, mate. Speak soon.
Cheers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Tony Lewis. If you want to learn more about the Burnt Chef Project, please head over to the Instagram or Facebook pages, The Burnt Chef Project, or alternatively, head over to our website, which is www.theburnchefproject.com, where you'll find a whole host of resources, information regarding mental health within hospitality, and loads of cool merch that you can purchase to support the project. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.